It's alright. The Sublimate Hour. I apologize to Danny Behar and all those who love him. That was a terrible impression. What's up, guys? Welcome back. And I say welcome back because it's been the long weekend of the 4th of July in my real-time life, and I have an almost 2-year-old, and boy, this long weekend, they got a whole new meaning. But it's so much fun. We had so much fun. But today I just want to hang out and play with new makeup. So I have the new Nouveau palette from Anastasia. I picked up a couple more things, but this is the main thing. I also am going to ruin Jason's life by by playing with the new toasted, it goes with my toast vibe today, toasted blushes from Phytosurgence. I say I'm ruining Jason's life because every time he launches a product, he's already like way in over his head with orders because everybody loves his stuff anyway, but also he's been teasing these for so long that I think when he finally like flipped the switch and released them, he was just inundated with a tsunami of orders. But I literally messaged him and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use them in a video now that you've released them, and I am going to make your life suck more. So that's one of the things that we're going to be swatching and using today. I also have this Anastasia bronzer, the cream bronzer in Sun-Kissed. The thing, it's not so much that I have very few ideas, it's that I have other things that I also have sitting in front of me, and I'm doing the math on whether I can include them in this video or not. I have new stuff from Victoria Beckham, I have new stuff from Chanel, but this is what we're gonna be doing today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in. I have like more hair ties than any human being should have, and yet this is what I choose to do. I choose to put my hair up with a freaking, like, a brush or something. Is that a vibe? Is that the, I believe we have finally stumbled upon the vibe, the only vibe. All right, so I already have my skincare on, my sunscreen. I'm trying to hunt down my, trying to grab things with my monkey toes. Trying to hunt down my PR from Exponent Beauty that they sent me because I haven't got a chance to use it yet, and Hannah was just talking on her channel about how incredible it is, and I was like, oh man, I need to get around to that, so. I just need to find it in all the pile of nonsense. Plus my child got in here yesterday and just started dumping everything on the floor in a very, very cute fashion. So yeah, that's why I'm grabbing things with my toes right now. The first thing I'm gonna use is actually this that I talk about how I never use it because it's my summer shade, and we're finally there, guys. We're finally in Summer Shadeville. And this is Melrose from the Tower 28 Sunny Days. And it is so beautiful. I just happened to get a shade that, you know, is perfect in terms of the undertone, but just happens to be slightly dark for me in the cooler seasons. But oh my gosh, it's so pretty. It's so pretty, it's so pretty. It is such a good base for all the different textures that I like to wear. It's really, really good with a high coverage creamy concealer. It can tolerate some powder, but it has a nice set down on its own. And it's super thin. I think that's something else that I really like about it. It kind of reminds me of like halfway in between Ilia Super Serum Skin Tint, which can be a little bit thick on the skin, and the Rare Beauty Positive Light. It's a little bit less coverage, a little tiny bit dewier, but it still has like the buildability and the wear time. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's really, really nice for dry skin. It's very nourishing for dry skin, which I happen to have. All right, first and foremost, let's play with this here bronzer. I do want to say that Anastasia, I have not revisited Anastasia in a long time, so forgive me if I am speaking out of turn on this being a current development or a recent development, but their packaging has really come a long way. Ooh, look at this. It's like matte all the way around, and it's kind of tonal. I don't know, maybe all the lids are like different colors based on the actual shade of the bronzer. I don't know, but this is just very, very pleasant to interact with. It's just a nice whole vibe. It does not feel inexpensive. Even though it's plastic, it doesn't feel inexpensive. And the new eyeshadow palette is similar. Ooh, this is not like any Anastasia palette that I have ever used in terms of just experiencing that packaging. It's actual, like, you know, embossed fabric kind of feeling, like a finished linen. It's got this really lovely, again, kind of embossed gold. And then the interior of it is not those little weenie pans. They're a little bit shallower, I think, and bigger. Anyway, but we're not there yet. We're playing with the bronzer. Now, this is not my ideal undertone of bronzer, and I only say that because I have had the privilege, right, of playing with so very many cream bronzers lately. Like, if this is the only one that I had, sorry, I'm trying to find the right brush. Let's just go Magnum. If this were my only cream bronzer, I'd get over it. You know, I'd be like, yep, that's a perfectly good shade. But knowing what I know now, having tried so many other ones in my collection, there are really, really spectacular undertone matches for me. The main one being, unfortunately, the one inside this Kaja trio. So it's like, if you don't find a highlight and a blush appealing that goes with this bronzer is just, ugh, it needs to be released individually. I can't stop using it. It's so pretty. For my skin tone, both in undertone and also in formula. So you can see, like, while this is fine, it's still giving me kind of a slightly unnatural tan. You know, it's making my skin look sort of pink by contrast, which my skin is not pink. So that means it's probably got just a little too much green in it. Just a little too much, which is, you know, still news you can use, right? Informative information. Can you tell I'm a little bit out of practice right now? I'm just a little bit fried. Ugh. Oh, let's swatch some blushes. I don't know which ones are actually gonna make it onto my face today. And the names of these from Phytosurgence are also similar to each other. And we will see how well I do with my, honestly, kind of diminished brain capacity right now. But I am going to swatch this against these against the Anastasia one as well. So the whole idea of the toasted ones is that he has taken, Jason of Phytosurgence, a lovely independently owned makeup brand out of Canada that many have grown to know and love. He has taken his beloved blush shades, his Skin Spark shades, and he just kind of muted them down. And I say that like it was a very simple process, you know, like, oh, you just mute it down. It's like, no, this was a painstaking process that he went through to really dial in these dusty, mucky versions of every color. I don't know which ones that they like correspond to. Again, his names are all very like sublimate, evaporate, exothermic, and condensate. That's the names of these, and like they're all kind of like that. They do a lot of alliteration, and it all makes very perfect sense when you start to see his personality, which is not a privilege that is exclusive to me. If you go on his lives on Instagram, which I highly recommend, he is a scream. He is one of the most fun people. Regardless, it's just his personality. So here we have condensate, exothermic, evaporate, and sublimate. So sublimate is a more kind of a dusty raspberry. Evaporate is almost like a beige on me. Exothermic is, I don't know, it's like brown. It's like straight up kind of like purpley brown on me. And then condensate is like my happy place. Look at it, it's like the color of my lips. It's like this really, really mucky, mauvey purple on me. Jason has to know that this is like catnip for me, but it's catnip for a lot of people. That's why it's been so in demand. So then I got Anastasia's stick blush, which I appreciate, a nice simple name, in Latte. That's not any shade on you, Jason. A lot of them have these really, really long names. I can take Skin Spark, that's fine. Ooh, okay. So this is Latte, and it is a much more kind of like straight down the middle, dusty pink, right? Neutral to cool, but mostly just a neutral pink. So it's somewhere in the evaporate and condensate area, kind of between the two. You know, maybe we'll top with that, but I don't think anybody's really particular. I'll tell you, it's a perfectly good blush. It's a little expensive. It's a nice package too. It's in this pretty like rose gold and everything, but like it's nothing specifically to write home about when you have as many blushes as I do. But if you do feel like picking this up, I think it's like $30. Like, it's kind of crazy expensive, but it's just as good as anything else. As a reviewer, like, I'm not gonna tell you that there's anything particularly special about it, and obviously this color it's a pretty like common color. This is Mimi here from, wow, they're almost a dupe, honestly. So that's West Manatellier Mimi, which is one of my favorite shades. So you might argue that Latte and Mimi are pretty darn similar. And they're pretty similar in formula as well. Mimi seems to be a little bit more peach, like a little bit. So with all of that in mind, I think that like it would not be a debut of the toasted blushes on my channel if I didn't start with Condensate, the one that I said is this like mucky mauve. And the main reason that I want to put this on first, like first, is for people like Hindash who just marvel at the way that colors change on my skin, because my skin has such like a funky, I mean, I don't think it's uncommon, but like my undertone changes things that look like that in the pan. So I need to find the right brush though. Again, my child threw everything on the floor. If you're new to the Phytosurgence Skin Spark, it is an intoxicating formula to interact with. It very much behaves like a soft chocolate ganache, and you need barely any of it, but it's not overwhelming. It just happens to spread in the most beautiful way. I actually think this is gonna complement the look I end up doing with that eyeshadow palette really well. See, look, it's like almost dirty looking on my skin at first. Because that was actually too much. I was used to putting it on like a regular blush, you know, but they happen to be very, very pigmented. I haven't put on any concealer yet either. And it just, turns the prettiest shade of like neutral, nudie rose. And again, the reason for that is, and it's exaggerated I think by that bronzer that I already had on, but my skin has, especially with a little bit of sun to it, a little bit of yellow. And that yellow counterbalances just a little bit of the purple and neutralizes it. It's beautiful. It's not necessarily the most natural looking thing, because I mean, like if I were to take a lap outside, I don't think that this is the color that my skin would take on, but it like pulls from other places in my skin in a way that it is still a naturally occurring color. Now I want to go in with the kind of brightest one, and this is Sublimate. Exothermic is going to really like deepen what I just did. So it's almost, if you are complected like with similar undertones to me, but you have deeper skin than I do, I would say it's like a deeper version of Condensate. I don't want to add more of that because it's just going to increase the intensity of what I already have going on. I think that, yeah, Sublimate is the one that we'll do next here. And I'm going to use so little of this because it is quite intense, but it is the perfect kind of sunburn berry shade to be like the focal point on the cheeks. And it's so unique. I don't have anything that looks like that. I don't have anything that looks like any of these. That's kind of the whole thing, is that he has dared to make something that kind of pushes the boundaries, right? Of what we're used to seeing in terms of the choices that makeup creators, brand owners put in their blushes, because, well, Sephora tends to kind of tell them what's going to sell. Even if they're not a Sephora brand or something like that, like, it's still pretty common knowledge what's going to sell. Is that not just, I would say that the closest thing that I have to this is probably, let me find it. It's the one from Rituel de Fille, Desire. Desire is another absolutely beautiful, rare kind of color. Very, very different formula. That's definitely something to note. It's gonna be stiffer. It's not going to have quite that same ganache feeling to it, but this is probably most similar to Condensate. Desire is this one right here, and it's a little bit more lilac, whereas this is a little more kind of a gray lavender. And that's, again, Condensate. But they're quite similar, just in vibe. There's more blue here, and there's just a little bit more like of a pinky red here. And not just blue, like gray blue, you know? All right, let's zoom through a little bit of concealer here because there will be no surprises in the concealer arena. It's just my item beauty. I'm gonna contour last, I think, and pull it all together at once, but this is the general vibe right now, and I love it. It's so pretty, the complexion look. Between the bronzer and the weird colored blushes, and my summer shade of the Tower 28 Sunny Days, I just feel cute, okay? I just feel cute. So, let's talk Anastasia here. I will be honest, when I ordered this, I like wasn't even looking at wisteria. Like, I don't care. It just doesn't look like something that is like particularly exciting or thrilling to me. Like, maybe we'll throw it on the inner corner for fun. But in terms of practicality, it just doesn't turn my crank. Some of them, though, have really like blown my mind more than I expected them to. Like, I would say Hope and Belle have been really, really impressive and really, really flattering for me, more so than I expected them to. And they're just kind of these really pretty greens. Obviously, Belle is much more gold, but they still are pretty green. But I was actually a little disappointed by the shade Wings because of exactly how minty it is. It really is not flattering on me. I put that on and it's got so much kind of icy blue to it that it makes my eyes look teeny tiny. So for all the work I do on it, just really doesn't improve anything. It's not doing me any favors. Now, some of the other things in here that surprised me were just how the mattes don't ever really go particularly deep. So, you know, if you want to play with a deep green, sure, that's about the deepest one that's a matte. And then the other two, that would be Metro and Fleur, they stay in this kind of rosy pink territory. And Metro looks really different picture to picture to picture that you see online. Like, I have seen people post about it on Instagram, and I've seen Metro look really like bricky all the way to orange, and then I would call it kind of like a, like almost like a, I don't know, it's like a clay rose color, but it's definitely not orange at all. I'm going to play with that today, but also I think that it's just worth pointing out that, like, unless you're planning on using something like Muse, which is, you know, this black shift kind of gold a little bit, I guess. It's not a matte, but if you're planning on using that as your, like, you know, deepest deepener shade and you're comfortable mixing that to get a little bit more gradient, then fine. But if you're really looking for drama, what's hard about this palette is that there aren't a lot of deeps in it. So it's kind of hard to build contrast. They're all light and medium. I will try and achieve as much as I can without it getting muddy, because pink and green are actually like kind of opposites of each other in terms of, like, you know, practical application on the skin. And so if you take something like Liberty and Metro and mix them together, it actually makes a pretty yucky looking color. It's not even like a nice rich brown that would serve as a believable shadow, or something that even has like enough coolness to it that you can use to kind of haze over something and it's undetectable as a green. It just doesn't quite work. So, like, this is a really beautiful color story, but I would not say it's like navigable to the, like, color theory beginner. You'd find it a little bit frustrating. And also, it's supposed to be a new set of formulas, and in my experience now, having used this like 6 or 7 times, I think that the shimmers and the satins are much improved. They're beautiful, and the wear time is a lot better on them, and there's a lot more payoff. They're not as dusty. You don't dig straight to the middle on them the way that you used to. But the mattes still do that thing that I didn't really like in the original Anastasia formula, and that is you place them on the skin and then you try and place something else next to them, and it kind of knocks off the first shade. It sort of blends it off of your skin. You'll probably see that as we go into. But I'll go ahead and swatch all of them real fast for you, and then we can start on the eye look. All right, so I swatched all the mattes on this hand and then all the rest of them on this hand. So there we have, from top to bottom on my right hand, Wisteria, Paloma, Fleur, Liberty, and Metro. And then on my left hand here, we have Wings, Lily, Hope, Belle, Isle, Peacock, and Muse. Peacock's pretty cool. Maybe we'll just kind of center our things around Peacock today because I haven't got a chance to use it yet. And you can see, even though it looks blue in the pan, it's actually got this really cool like red shift. Let's do that. Let's start with that. I am going to prime because the mattes, they need a little bit of help. I'm using the About Face Smoothing Shadow Fix. The formula is really, really similar to, you know, Urban Decay or the Thrive or anything else. All right, let's start with Peacock. I have no idea how this is about to go. Other than that Wings shade, so far this has been a really, really pretty color story for brown eyes. The iciness of Wings starts to do that thing that I don't totally love on brown eyes, which it makes my eyes go kind of, like I said, small, but also a little bit red. Oh my god, that's really, really neat. It looks better in person than it does on camera. It's looking really weird and patchy on camera, but it's super, super cool in person. Wow. Yeah, we're gonna use a matte to really fill in that spot right there that tends to look kind of gappy. But the way that just one shade transforms like that, the way that when you kind of spread it out, it goes red on the edges, that should be in its own pot, you know? Well, that is surprising. That is downright weird looking. Wow, we got some work to do, guys, pulling this back from the brink, because that is strange looking. I'm gonna close the windows. Okay, so let's devise our next move here. That is so interesting. So I think that the next thing to do is to go in with Metro, because it's kind of the color that you achieve when you spread Peacock out, and it's a matte, so I think it will work quite nicely. I was using my finger before, obviously, but this is the Travel 207 from BK. I say this a lot, but not often enough. I have a code down below for BK. 10% off, I believe. And BK is like where most of my brushes come from. Owned by the lovely Lisa J Makeup. And they are high-performing, fantastic, affordable brushes that also happen to be cruelty-free, synthetic. Okay, I'm getting a little carried away because I'm like trying to almost color in the edge that I created there, when really what I need to be doing is just mattifying it. Holy moly, this is so different from anything that I've created from this palette so far. Wow. Mostly I've just been playing in Lily and Belle, you know, and getting these kind of like green gold looks, which it lends itself absolutely beautifully to, so I'm glad we're going a little bit different and weird today, a little wild. I'm going to grab something a little bit bigger than that. This is the BK Travel 203, and I'm going to go into Fleur. You can see they still kick up a little bit. Dusty does not mean low quality, but that is definitely something that everybody associated with the matte formula from Anastasia for a lot of years, was just that like tendency to kick up a little bit, and they still do that. So I'm mainly using this to add some opacity, because one of the things that I noticed with Peacock initially was just that like as you spread it out, it starts to get patchy. And that also might be because of the primer, because primer tends to make things go on a little skippier. But Fleur is doing a good job of either, or possibly both, blending out the edges and maybe also picking some of the other colors up. We shall see. Okay, I'm gonna take Paloma. I am grateful when a palette like this has a matte cream shade in it. Like I said, it doesn't really go as deep as I would like on the mattes, but I am happy that there is a really, really light shade for my sake. It's doing a nice job of kind of blurring the edges too, which I definitely need right now. That peacock shade came in hot. Kind of building a little bit of kind of artificial negative space right there using Paloma, because Paloma is really, really similar to like a, you know, true skin color for me. So there we go. It's kind of nice. And this is where I kind of run into the issue of not being able to get the depth on the outer corner that I personally like. I always like to place something out here that makes my eyelids not look like little like balls. Like right now they look like little blobs, right? I do also kind of want to blend between the two there, but I'm not really sure what could help me achieve that. Maybe Lily. Lily is kind of this funky, pinky multi-chrome. Yeah, it's kind of a multi-chrome. It's honestly, it's gorgeous. Like the way that it shifts is really, really interesting. It's like peach with a little bit of like green in it. So I think I will take a little bit of that on a Sephora 18 and just use that to kind of blend Paloma and Peacock together right here. You can definitely feel that falling out though. They kind of top out on layering, but it spreads out really, really beautifully. I definitely think that helped make that not so stark, you know? I'm gonna take a little bit of Lily and go underneath too. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, especially when I'm new to a brand, this is one of those situations where I tend to get a lot of comments where people are like, actually, this works better wet, or her formulas tend to do X, Y, and Z better in these conditions, or what have you. And I always really value those kinds of comments. They help me kind of get better use out of things like this, even if, you know, I'm not able to share every single detail the first review. That's why it's a beautiful thing to have such a lovely community. I think in the interest of displaying what you can and cannot do with this palette, I'm going to kind of go nuclear here and use Muse, it being just so obviously, and by leaps and bounds, the darkest shade in the palette. I think with Peacock, it's gonna look okay. But it can be really, really contrasty if you try and use it as your like outer corner darkener shade, deepener shade, on top of something like Fleur or Paloma when they are, or even like one of the shimmers, you know, any of these shimmers in here, because it's just, it's so contrasty, it like doesn't even want to blend. So let's see. You see how dark, it's really dark by comparison to the rest of the palette. So it's like, now you're in it, you know? Like and like I said, some people are more used to and better at blending a shade like that, mixing it in with other colors than I am. But I mean, it just goes and goes and goes. It's a very, very unexpectedly deep and pigmented shade compared to the rest of the palette. It's almost like they ran out of spots on the palette and realized that they needed more contrast, and so they threw in like the darkest shade that they could find. You're like, here, black. What? Like, why? Why is it black? It could have been like a very, like that deep and saturated, but a burgundy or a green that would have gone better with anything else in the palette, but it's black with a little tiny shift of gold to it that just doesn't really go with the rest of the palette, you know? Maybe I won't take anything. Maybe I will just grab like a fluffy brush. Oh, I have one right here. And and just kind of blur that, or try to. It's funny to think about the fact that I used to basically exclusively do all of my eyeshadow with a brush this size. People probably like winced, cringed even, being like, how is she gonna get any kind of detail? Of course it's a muddy mess. Because I'm an impatient Aries, that's why. Okay, and I feel like we have kind of just achieved a little bit of a muddy mess here. Oh, by the way, that was the 202. So I'm gonna go back in with the 203, and it doesn't have any, I didn't put anything else on it. Do you see how the shadow just kind of knocks back off? Like I'm able to there's nothing really on this. And I'm able to blend, and it just kind of goes away. It's sort of weird. Not the hallmark of a formula that I usually am drawn to. And I mean, it's a nice color, it is. I just don't think it really goes with what's happening here, you know? I'm gonna see if I can apply a little bit more of Peacock, but just with a brush. I'm expecting it's going to be a little more challenging, but... see, and that's gonna add too much, like, sheen. But it's okay, it's all right. I mean, we're kind of, again, we're in it. We're in it at this point. We really have to, like, own the journey. I'm gonna let that be that. And I'm going to do what I always do, and that is my eyeliner, my mascara, my brows, and in this case, I'm gonna do a little bit of powder and contour, because those aren't new, in the zoom through, and then we'll get to lips. A little bit more blush because 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't know whether it is a contrast thing where like my eyes took over and we lost my cheeks, or if my cheeks ate some of it. So I'm gonna go with Sublimate again. It's all right. The Sublimate hour. I apologize to Danny Behar and all those who love him. That was a terrible impression. Yeah. Oh boy. It really, we just put on our boots today and we traipsed right on into dystopian cowgirl fortune teller territory, and no one even tried to stop us, did they? They all aided and abetted, as a matter of fact. Ooh, look at how the light hits Peacock on my eyelids. Let's go in on my lips here. So I have been actually really enjoying the drama that I'm achieving with the House of Sillage Beige Affair lip liner. Again, it's like right there in like exothermic territory, right? I feel like it's gonna really go with this, and then we'll just probably put something quite light on my lips. And it might not be immediately obvious when you're watching this. You might think, oh, she must have just like practiced this look a lot of times or whatever and figured out what went together. It's actually a lot of thinking through color theory as I go. And in this case, I mean, it really is just like, I wanted to stay in this particular colorway of like browns that have been muddied or pinks that have been muddied quite a bit, and that's why it works. And that's why it is working. I feel like if I had gone peach on my cheeks and then tried to go for something that was a little bit too anything, any pink or whatever on my lips, we'd be in trouble. I don't want to oversell the garment here and be like, yep, all this stuff is just really easy to put on. It's like you really have to like match it with other things that work with it. That works. So this is that new Wonder Gloss Collagen Lip Oil from Beauty Pie that I was talking about. These are beautiful, beautiful. And this is the shade Sun Hazed. It's the more kind of bronze one. It's a liquid lip balm formula. So it's super slippy. It's also very glossy. Use that. Oh, what do you say we actually use just a teeny tiny bit of the Anastasia blush here? Just gonna add a little bit of like a, by contrast actually, kind of a warmer pink. It's a lot of look. Oh, nothing, just adding a little bit of bronzer to my cheeks because I just feel like the cream only vibe is reflecting light differently than everything else on my skin, and so I just wanted to put a little powder on to absorb light. So let's zoom through these prices real quick and then I will go through my final thoughts. Ms. Anastasia Beverly Hills. Okay, the Nouveau palette is $55. The blush is actually even more than I thought it was. It's $32. Okay, and you get 0.28 ounces or 8 grams. Deceptively quite a lot of product, but still, it's $32. And the cream bronzer is $35. And you get 30 grams or 1 ounce. Jason's blushes, the Phytosurgence Cheek Spark, you can only get, Skin Spark, you can only get on the Phytosurgence website, and they're $21 Canadian, which I think works out to something like $19 USD. I mean, they are super great value. I also highly recommend following Phytosurgence on Instagram because he and his partner are a scream. They are so funny. All right, let's chat final thoughts here. I want to refresh my final thoughts on the Tower 28 Sunny Days. I know I always have said, I'm like, yes, it's great, but it's not the right color for me because it's winter, and I will use it again when it's warm outside. I have renewed my love for this. This is an SPF. They say it's primarily a tinted sunscreen, meaning that, you know, you can use it as a sunscreen. I don't feel particularly perfectly protected by doing that. Not that I've seen results one way or the other. I just know that I'm probably not wearing enough of it for that, so I still wear an extra SPF. But even just as a darn good summertime lightweight foundation skin tint product, it is so pretty. It is so pretty. It looks so nice and it's so comfortable and it wears a long time and it's really hydrating and it's so pretty. And this is the shade Melrose. So I really, really love it. I love it. I love it so much. And I'm glad that I'm finally being able to like use it again. So the next thing, I mean, this is almost just me showing you something I already knew that I loved. I've had these for a long time. I think that Jason like threatened to skin me if I used them before they were released because he was already getting so many requests to release them, and he kept posting swatches and stuff being like, this is not a release announcement, this is not a release announcement, because people were bugging him so much about it. So they are finally released, but if you could have a mental image of Jason, it is like this non-sleeping, frazzled, frenetic Virgo trying to water all of his plants and fulfill all of his orders. So anyway, yeah, I love these and I have reviewed them many times in the past. I really can't say enough about the formula, and these colors are pretty darn like unmatched by anything else that I have. The Anastasia bronzer, like I said, it's really, really nice, and I do think it's a pretty good value for the money, but it's a little bit, it kind of like when I was using the Vesca powder bronzer, it's almost like I had to go a shade deeper in order to get my undertones right because the lightest shade, it was just a little bit too green, but there are plenty of people who that's great news for, you know? And I think that that's just valuable information, regardless of whether it works for me. Oh, let's talk about this eyeshadow palette. It's what we're all here for, right? So, I mean, that's a painting I did that I have yet to like send off to the commissioner, the county commissioner, the person who commissioned it. These are colors that I like to work with just in life. They're things that I'm drawn to. This very much kind of goes with that, right? And I love the muted nature of them. I love the decisions that were made in this color story for the most part. And I do mostly feel like it delivers on its promises. I know I gave a lot of caveats as I was putting it on, but that's because I'm always weighing things against whether or not someone wants to part with $55 for an eyeshadow palette. You know, is it going to change your life? Like, I want to go like this at the end of every video. Break the spell, because as you're watching me put something on, yeah, it's gonna be really enchanting and beautiful, but I want to enumerate every bit of the experience that I've had with it, just in case I happen to kind of like touch on something, touch a nerve for you where you're like, oh yeah, no, that's a deal breaker for me, you know, even if it's something really small. So all that to say, I really think this is quite lovely and I get excited to use it. It is very rewarding in the sense of these textured shadows. They are, they're really lovely and velvety and gorgeous and emollient, and the way that they blend on the eyes is very, very unique. They're super velvety. They do have a little less of their own stick. And I think while I was doing my eyeliner, my mascara, my eyebrows and everything, the thing I was actually pondering was, if this color story were in Pat McGrath formulas, would I find a way of appreciating it more? Because I do feel like there are some misses in terms of the combo here. The answer is probably, but I don't find the formula to be that much of a deal breaker here. It's definitely not as frustrating as I found the old Anastasia formulas to be, even if the mattes are not exactly as grippy as I prefer. I like a nice even grippiness, you know, I like a Pat McGrath grippiness. I don't really love a Natasha Denona grippiness, but also like this and the at least old Melt Cosmetics formula, they both just kind of blend away. They live in my memory as touchstones of that particular type of formula. Some people love it and are willing to do the work to get it to grip, and some people really like to like pat product on, and others who really like to kind of blend and blur things. This is gonna blend and blur away for people who, like, that's their preferred means of applying a matte shadow. It's just gonna be a little bit confusing. You're gonna be like, wait, I thought I already put another shade down and now all I can see is this one. It's like they kind of pick themselves up. So it's less bad than it was, but it still does that on the mattes. But all that to say, I don't find it to be a deal breaker as much as I would have before with the old formula, and I find that the shimmer shades themselves are winners. They're really, really gorgeous, but a big gap in deeper, medium deep tones. So we've got nice light shades and a few different really pretty highlights that you can use. Just the medium shades are really beautiful. Like, you can look at this and think of all of the different combos, right? You look at it and you're like, that's a lot of really gorgeous eyeshadow looks that I could get out of this that are like either in a pink territory or a green territory or going into like a pearly gold territory. And also these, like, you know, cool shifting chromes and things like that. That part of it really, really delivers. Far more than like the Huda Mercury Retrograde palette that I looked at, salivated over, finally got it on sale, and like immediately decluttered it because I was like, these shades are so disappointing. I really, really doubt their commitment to sparkle motion. I do not doubt this palette's commitment to sparkle motion. The one thing that I think it really, really lacks is like a navigability as an all-in-one palette, which honestly a 12 shade palette like this should be. You should be able to get several looks out of this without reaching for something else, and the problem becomes this shadow being the deepest shade and nothing really bridging the rest of the shades to it. That's something that's always been an advantage for me with an Aether palette, for example. So here is, by contrast, the Desert Sunset palette. So not only do you have that really, really deep chocolatey brown, it's not quite as deep as that black, but it's right there, and it's got that coolness to it that's going to make it really good for like deepening your crease or your outer corner, and it's matte, but she also puts in these kind of like weird in-between cool and, sorry, not even cool. In this palette, they're neutral and warm, but this is still kind of a weird green kind of undertone in this shade. And this is gonna be much, much warmer kind of clay color. And of course, this is because it's a desert palette. You're gonna be getting a lot desert sunset. It's gonna be warmer. The point being, they naturally reach towards one another. You have a place your brain goes and you have options. Whereas I'm navigating through this and I hit little roadblocks where I am trying to achieve a certain illusion with these shades that excite me so much in order to give my eyes kind of the contour that I want, right? And all I'm left with is like the second deepest shade being this Liberty color, and like that's a choice. Like, do you want moss green as your outer corner shade when you're working with like these rosy pinks? Not usually. It doesn't, especially with this formula, it doesn't make for a very like pretty color when you mix those two colors together. And that's the disadvantage here. Like I said, if you are willing to kind of mix that with other things, maybe, but I still feel like it being black and not a deep brown or a deep burgundy or a deep green is a miss because it doesn't go with the rest of the palette. It's like cooler toned on the, it just completely overwhelms everything. I could barely even use a brown, like a deep cocoa brown eyeliner on top of it because black is just such a choice. And it's not pure black, it's not matte black, it's a black shift, but still, it goes pretty darn black on the skin. So if you're okay using like kind of a neutral to cool toned black as your like outer corner deepening shade, if that's something that's in your comfort zone, fine. But like it is kind of a one trick pony because it's not, you know what I mean? There's not a lot of nuance there. And I think that I achieved something really nice, but I have with all these other colors either had to create a look that skewed so light that these were high contrast enough to make a believable shadow on my outer corner, or pull out another palette like the Hindash palette or something. So that is all of the information that I have for you on that. Oh, actually I have one more piece of information, and that is the question where everyone was asking, they're like 3 or 4 of the shades are not meant to go close to the eyes. That is a typical pressed pigment warning that has to be put on. I'll put it on the screen because it's actually something that goes on a ton of different eyeshadow formulas if they have a tendency to like stain the skin or have a certain kind of pigment and then they're like, oh, you know, don't stick this, you know, next to your eye. And it is not some kind of toxicity warning. I'm not saying you should disregard it. Do what you will with that information, but this is not the first time that that's ever happened. I'm pretty sure like the Pure by Robbie de Christie palette had that, and like some of the other ones that have like really, really bright colors in them, a lot of times that'll happen. So it's probably Wisteria and some of the other ones, you know? So again, it's not a fake warning, but at the same time, it's actually a pretty common thing. Anyway, my battery's low and I think that if I just keep jabbering, we'll get away from the point. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys, and I hope that you got to see kind of, you know, my experience with all these products so far. If you did like this, or it had a great time, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep hanging out with me on this channel, hit the button down below and subscribe. I would love it if you guys did. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me today. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.